Welcome to the Bad Roman Podcast. On this show, we talk with veterans, community leaders, Christians and non-Christians as we explore the entanglement of Christians with the state. The Bad Roman Project was created out of the firm belief that as Christians, we are called to follow Christ, not the state. Here is your host, Craig Hargis.
Hey folks, today we're joined by Nathan, the host of the Czars podcast. Nathan is also our social media director for the Bad Roman Project. I've been wanting to have Nathan on for a while now to talk about the memes he creates for social media and where his inspiration and creativity comes from. I asked Nathan to come on and talk about that and his podcast. You can always find it very interesting when people start a new podcast to reach a different kind of group searching for liberty with a different perspective.
Would rather serve God than serve Caesar, you feel me? I'm just trying to live what he said. I'm just trying to live what he said. I ain't scared, I will take one to the head. Go ahead. So it's safe to say that I'm bad. So it's safe to say that I'm bad. So it's safe to say that I'm bad.
Abby, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, thanks.
So I know you're familiar with Nathan. We've kind of gone along this journey for about the same amount of time, I think. You know, Nathan kind of took over our Facebook and then added Twitter and Instagram and stuff after TJ passed away because our producer messaged me and asked me if I wanted him to come in and kind of handle that when I was handling that stuff with TJ. And it was a big help as I was kind of watching it from the distance during that week when I was back home with family. And I got home, I asked Nathan to if he would be interested in just kind of handling that full time because it really helped me just focus on the podcast. And he's been great at it. Nathan, I really appreciate that. How are you doing today?
Doing good. It's the weekend. I'm relaxed. I'm drinking some seltzer water.
Seltzer water? What does that taste like?
Kind of like nothing. And this one's like a lime ginger mule. That's what it calls it. It's bubbly water. It's pretty tasty.
Is that alcoholic or is it just
non-alcoholic?
No?
Yep.
So it's not like what am I thinking of? What am I thinking of that's got alcohol in it that has seltzer in it?
The White Claw stuff that everybody's drinking.
Yeah. The White Claw. Yeah. That's what I'm thinking of. I don't drink that garbage either. But I've got a cup of coffee and some ice water with me right now. So,
well, if I felt like it, I have some scotch sitting right here with me. And I don't necessarily need the White Claw. That's
I got a buddy that drinks White Claw, and I make fun of him all the time. I was like, why do you do that? It doesn't even taste like anything. I've tried it. I said, it doesn't taste like anything.
That's why they like it.
And it's expensive. Why don't you just go get some Busch
really
Lights?
Expensive.
Doesn't make any sense to me. But why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? And then I want to kind of talk to you about the what you do for the Bad Roman, because I think it might be interesting for the listeners who follow our social media to kind of get where your inspiration comes from for the memes, because you will drop some memes or you'll send some stuff to me to kind of okay them if you think they're a little too edgy or something. And it's some of this stuff.
Sometimes they're risque.
Sometimes they're risque. And then sometimes I say no. And then sometimes I say yes. And then I get in trouble with our producers. So I take all the blame for that. But some of the stuff that you'll drop, I have no idea what you're talking about. You'll send it to me and I'm like, I don't even know what this means. What are we talking about here? So you'll have to send me a link so I can read the link to get caught up on the meme. But is that how you kind of come about it? You're just kind of watching everything going on out there?
I pay way too much attention to pop culture and what's going on with politics. And well, my name is Nate. I am a father and a husband and a Christian and an agorist and a truther. And I spend the majority of my time, I'm also a chef, so I cook professionally, but I have a weird job where I'm allowed to have a headphone in the entire time. So the majority of the time I'm listening either to the radio or podcasts and trying to catch up on what's going on in the world. And I just spend too much time online and started getting obsessed with politics. And I started making memes just to vent and just to have fun and just to laugh. And I ran into the Bad Roman, and one of the memes you had made, I liked the concept, but I didn't like it. To me, it looked clunky. And so I remade it for you and I sent it to you. And that's how I think that's how we met.
Well, I think so, but I think there's another. I keep remembering this other event that we met because, it was in the Anarcho Christian group, and
you had made a post, and I asked if I could turn it into a meme.
That's what I remember because this guy was like, "If you don't like it, you can leave it." One of those types, and I was like, "But I'm not interested in becoming a victim of American foreign policy." And I thought it was funny. A lot of people thought it was funny, and I shared it in that group, and you saw it. And, hey, can I make a meme? And you made a meme, and that's how I remember us getting to know each other a little bit. And I think as time went on, I was like, because I didn't have time to sit down and try to figure. I don't know how to make a meme, so try to sit down and make a meme was not something I had time to do. And then I asked you to kind of do it, and then, like I said, then after TJ passed, you started doing it on full time, and it's been really helpful. It's very creative, actually.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, man. I mean, I was probably like 5-6 months into making memes when I first ran into you. So I've learned a lot working for the Bad Roman and making memes for the Bad Roman. So I've been growing as well as the page has been growing. So that's been a lot of fun.
Well, you've played a big role in our audience growing as well. I mean, because it's always strange to me. I mean, memes were funny to me. You know, you'll see one, and it's just funny stuff. But it's always funny how a meme can talk to somebody over like a podcast is going to. People are going to understand a meme better, and I always find it interesting. I don't get it so much. I'd rather listen to somebody yell in my ear, but
it's kind of like a non-intrusive, interesting way that somebody can absorb an idea, and it can do a lot. You know what I mean? It can like really light a fire and drop a red pill if you want to use that sort of, it can change minds, or it can also make someone pretty hard and ruin their day.
Well, I think it makes them have to go kind of research it. And it could ruin their day too, because if they do kind of go back and research what the meme's talking about, then it might change their perspective. Or they're going to, I've seen it happen as well on the page too, where it'll stir up. Some of them stir up some stuff, and like I told you a long time ago, I said just stop commenting on it.
Yeah, I've had to
because the thread's going to take care of itself at some point. I learned that from Stephen from Anarcho Christian, because if I wanted to engage everybody that was coming on there and commented at the very beginning, I was like, I've got it figured out. But I asked Stephen one time, I was like, I noticed you don't really engage some of these folks on your page. He goes, every once in a while. He said, but I don't have to. He said, because the thread takes care of itself. And he's right. It does take care of itself. So I will read them. Anybody listening to this know that I am reading these comments. I'm sure Nathan is reading these comments too. And I know our producer reads them because she'll text me sometimes and talk to me about some of the thread going on. But those conversations are being read.
I don't read all the conversations. That would make me crazy.
I told Abby the other day, I said, it's funny because for some reason I'll be scrolling through Facebook and I'll see a post, but at the bottom you can see like people commenting before you even click on the comment part of it. And I always see Abby's name in these comments. And it happens so much on my thread, and I don't know why. Because she says she doesn't read comments, but she will engage people. So it's always fun for me to see Abby engaging people. If we could just get her to do it on the page some, that would be fun too. She's doing enough for
I do every now and then. Something has to catch my attention, and I have to be in the right mood and have some free time to go back and forth with somebody. Some days it's just like, I have other stuff to do.
Well, sometimes the stuff can last for days too. Have y'all ever noticed that with these threads? They'll go on for days. Like you'll go to sleep and you'll wake up and people are still talking about it, because my hours are completely different than most people I know. I get to bed about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, sleep till 2 or 2:30, 8.5 hours all day. This stuff's still going on. And I'm going like trying to, and I'm like, Abby, I'll just give up. I don't care. I've lost interest at this point.
Well, a lot of these people, these are the type of folk that like the smell of their own farts kind of thing. They just want to get up there and just, they want to tell us how wrong we are.
Those are my favorites.
Yeah, they're fun.
That's interesting that you brought that. I got an email from this guy the other day, and I went to send it to Abby, but he emailed our podcast email, and he had listened to our, I guess he's a friend of Benji Graves. I've had Benji Graves on way back in the beginning, and he goes, I listened to it from the beginning, and he goes, y'all are completely wrong. And he went on this entire rant of email. It was so long. And I was just kind of waking up, getting ready for work. And I was kind of reading through it. And I'm like, I'm not reading all this. I'm not going through this whole thing. I mean, I appreciate the engagement, their interaction, but so I responded to what I could at the time.
Yeah.
And then he sent me another book. And I was like, I can't read all this. I've got to go to work. And this was the next day, actually. And I had to get ready to go to work again. So I finally texted him. I was like, listen, man, I work 6-7 days a week this time of year. He said, I'm not interested in listening to any more of your podcasts.
Okay.
I said, okay. I said, I can't make you. I said, but if you seem to have questions and we have answers for you in this podcast, if you'll just go through it. And I recommended some of the shows. I recommended some books. And he goes, no, I'm not. Basically, he's just not interested. I said, okay, well, have a good day. I said, I can't do anything.
Yeah.
I mean, we can put the content out there for you. You can disagree with one show, but we're at 50 right now. There's 49 other shows you can go find some information on, so it's not, you could find the answers to your questions. I mean, I could tell you, but you're not going to listen to me anyway. That's obvious. And I think that's the same thing we see on social media. You could drop link after link after link of information for folks. And if it does not going on up here with them, then it doesn't matter.
I love my fellow autists out there. But that's what that sounds like to me. It doesn't sound like he even knew how to like really interact with you. He's like, you're wrong, and then like wrote you a book. Like that's not how you're going to get interaction. That's not how you're going to get my attention or get me to read what you have to say.
He used all the same scriptures that are used against Christian anarchists. So I wasn't hearing anything new from him. Like he wasn't revealing something new to me that I had not heard before, that I hadn't studied before. So I'm not trying to sound rude when I say this, but I wasn't completely interested in this conversation. I'll engage you for a little bit, but if you're going to tell me that you're not interested in learning more, then I can't help you. Hey folks, Craig here, and I'd like to let y'all know we are always looking for writers to contribute to our blog. I don't care if you have any experience or not. 2 or 3 of our contributors had no prior experience writing, and it turns out they have a real knack for it. Our project coordinator helps them put the articles together, and she publishes them on our website and Facebook page, and you will also have the option to come on the show and go more in depth about your article. So if you like what we're doing at The Bad Roman and would like to try your hand at writing, then send us an email at thebadromanpodcast@gmail.com. We're having a blast with this project, and we would love for you to join us in helping promote it. Now back to the show. But anyway, we're kind of living in a cool time right now. It kind of sucks in a lot of ways, but we're seeing a lot of things going on right now.
Yeah, cool time is a weird way of describing it.
Well, I'm talking about with what we're seeing. To me, all right, at the time of this recording, I don't know how much y'all are following this stuff going on in Canada. I don't really know. The way I see it is a bunch of statists running around out there waving their flags, trying to change the government and get the government to give them back their freedoms. That's what I see. But I also see a bunch of people trying that they're waking up to what's going on.
So the best thing that I can say is this. It's like, as much as we make fun of our patriot, wing of the libertarians, and we kind of, whatever you want to call them, America First, patriot, like Donald Trump type of folks, we give them a lot of crap. But to be honest, man, where else have we seen any resistance at all? I see ANCAP sitting on their butts. I see, agorists doing their own thing. Like agorists, like we're using cryptocurrencies. We're making our own counter markets over here. We're like trading and selling and stuff, but we're not really paying attention to like culture in general, because that's kind of what, that's libertarians. We don't play well with others, right? So I see those patriots, man. I got to say that I'm glad that there is some pushback. I'm glad to see them fighting back. So all I was saying is, like, as much crap as I see that we give those patriot folks, those flag wavers, I see them at least organizing, and I see them at least pushing back. And maybe you're right that they are fighting and begging for the government to give them back something. And so maybe that's the wrong approach, but I think that we could probably learn a couple things from them.
No, I agree. I mean, I'm in this Convoy to Ottawa public group on Facebook. The reason I joined it is because I kind of want to watch what's going on and read what these folks are saying, that people that are on the ground there, So, and I made a post in there. I was like, y'all just need to be careful. I said, because this is going you're going to have politicians that are going to try and infiltrate your movement right now. We saw it with the Tea Party here. And they agreed with me for the most part, but then they were like, well, how are we supposed to, I don't know. They're just seeking the,
See, that's the hardest thing, man, is because how many Fed infiltrators are down there. Like there's been a couple of times, I think they've been caught too. There was a guy that was down there at the trucker thing, right? And he was waving a Nazi flag and everyone was like, that guy's not with us. And you can actually point him out because they're dumb enough I don't know why they haven't learned this yet. They're not listening to us. They all wear the same boots. They all wear these same black, like military given, boots, and people pointed him out and shoved him out of the thing that said he's not with us. So there is like agitators out there that are definitely Fed infiltrated. They want to paint this as like racist, xenophobic, this, that, and the other, whatever catchphrase you want to make it. And it's really just normal folks pushing back saying, keep that crap away from me. I don't want to take it.
Yeah. And I saw I listened to a statement by the prime minister. I can't even pronounce it. Was it Trudeau?
Justin Trudeau.
Is that how you say it? I was listening to something, and he's just basically calling all these people short of racist, basically, white nationalists and stuff like that. And they're going against the truth, but how they're not being peaceful. But if you watch the video during this commentary, these people are out there helping folks that are homeless. They're out there they're about there feeding people.
Yeah, man.
They're out there having a good time. And there's not just white people out there either, too. That's what they're not talking to you about. There's people from all walks of life there.
I mean, it's going to be a majority white people because they're in Canada, because that's Canada. But no, yeah, man, they're actually they are feeding people. They're feeding the homeless. They're feeding it's not what it's painted. It's not how it's being portrayed at all.
Now, so if you've been paying attention to this, I'm curious, and I asked Abby about this last week when we recorded. Do you know what their goal is, to send all these truckers and farmers to sit there in the middle of the city? I mean,
so all I know is what I've heard, and I've talked to a couple friends of ours that are in Canada, and basically what it was is Trudeau had said that if you're not vaccinated, you can't come into Canada. And I think he might have even said you can't even travel between provinces if you're not vaccinated. And then he said to the truckers, all truckers have to be vaccinated. And so this was also American truckers. They can't go into Canada to drop anything off if they're not vaccinated. And so he was creating we're already in some crazy shortage, all this, supply chain. I think it's all manufactured, but whatever you want to call it. This was going to put an extra big, stick in the spokes. And then the truckers I think it's more than half of the truckers in at least the United States, more than half the truckers, 60% of them aren't vaccinated. So what are you going to do?
But what are they doing sitting there? Are they just sitting there in the city, just kind of locking it down, turning the tables?
They're locking it down as far as I know. I think they might be clogging up streets on purpose. And I think they're also because I've heard people can't get and go places. I'm not there on the ground, but they're also not shipping anything. So they're putting a halt to shipping in general right now. They're just doing a massive strike.
Okay. So maybe that's their goal. I mean, I don't know. It's interesting too. This with the whole GoFundMe thing, they raised over $10 million, and then I guess one of the police chiefs or something there came out and said that, I don't know what he said, but then the GoFundMe's we're not going to give them this money. They started refunding people's money, and now there's this other site, the Go Send Go or something. It's a Christian based site, I think, but they've raised in the last 24 hours. They've raised over $3 million for these truckers. So I saw a meme the other day and I don't know if it's accurate, but they've got enough money to sit there for 2 to 4 years if they want to. And I think that's interesting too. We talk about civil disobedience all the time. They're clogging up the streets, but they're not hurting anybody that I can tell physically. And they're just putting a stop to the production.
No, not directly. Not direct. I mean, if you're trying to order food or something and you can't get it, I'm not one of those people that think that that's a violation of the NAP or something, but that does definitely affects you. But I think that's the reason why they're trying to do that. I think that if there was no effect, then what's the point?
I agree. Nathan's co-host, he joined us a little late, so he's coming in a little late right now. So This is Tony, the co-host for the Reality Czars podcast.
It's not actually any violence. It's just a matter of they're not doing their job or they're not doing this particular function, which is a very important part of society. And they have every right not to do that, just like you have a right not to do your work, whatever that is.
So if you want to play devil's advocate, like I was listening to, we were talking to a guy, Tony, a couple nights ago, smart dude. He doesn't think that this is like he doesn't think this is really a grassroots movement. He thinks that a lot of those truckers are there for the right reasons. He thinks that there are a lot of people there that think they're there to protest this. But he thinks that this is another big push for the deep state in a lot of ways, because and I think he might be right. Like Elon Musk is pushing really hard trying to make these automated self-driving trucks. And so I think that this is going to be looked at like a January 6th event, maybe. And they're going to be like, we can never allow this to happen again. And so we can't afford to have physical drivers in these trucks. And this could be a big push, a really big push just to get automated truckers going.
Right, and put federal funding into it. That makes a lot of sense. And because I was going to say, instead of just sitting there waiting for the government to change their minds, wouldn't it be more effective if they just kept doing their job unvaccinated? And it's like if people didn't want to accept their shipments or whatever because they were unvaccinated, then it's like too bad for you. But on the other hand, I can see that not making like as big of a splash. Not that a lot of leftist news is reporting about this anyways. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that is interesting. I mean, that would have been one way to get around it, is just keep doing your job and just say, okay, what's your enforcement? Are you going to stop all of us? We're just doing our jobs. And then all of a sudden, de facto, those laws don't mean anything anymore because they're unenforceable.
Well, also, the majority of those, like I think you mentioned a while ago, Nathan, the majority of those truckers are vaccinated. And they're still going up there and fighting or doing this protest with the unvaccinated truckers, because they made a choice to get vaccinated, and that's fine, but they don't think anybody should be forced to do it. And they're all kind of, I think that's pretty cool to me, because you haven't seen that a lot with the unvaccinated versus the vaccinated going on right now. Usually they're at each other's throats about it. Well, you got these folks that are vaccinated and unvaccinated, and they're joined together in a cause to stop the government from forcing people to get vaccinated. To me, that's kind of cool.
Well, you see, those were normal people that decided to get vaccinated. Those aren't the COVIDiots. Those aren't the ones that are like in the religion of COVID-19. Those are the ones that like they got their COVID-19 jab as like, I mean, that was a religious thing. And that was like a sacrifice to their God almost. And so the fact that you're walking around without it, you're a heretic. And so those are the people that you can't talk to. I mean, there's just some normal folks that just, they watched the news and the news told them to get it. And so they did it, and it wasn't like it wasn't religious for them.
Yeah, if you don't have access to alternative media, I can understand why you would want to get the vaccine. Like, you've been locked down for 2 years in this plague time, and you just buy into the narrative, and you're like, this will keep me safe. I won't get COVID if I get this. We found out that that's not true. I don't want to spread COVID, so I'm going to get this. Found out that that's not true. The saying that it makes the symptoms better when you get it, that may or may not be true, depending on whether you believe them now. But yeah, I can see a lot of people who just got vaccinated out of default reality. And now they're like, wait a minute, we still don't get back to normal? That was the deal.
Well, how many times are you going to do a rain dance? It's still, the sun is shining. You're not getting any rain. So
and they tell you, yeah, you just have to do this and then it's over. Okay, now one more thing. Okay, now one more thing. Okay. And it's like, eventually people have to be like, I don't trust you anymore.
You just have to dance harder.
Just one more booster.
Just dance harder.
Just a half a jab.
I don't know where it ends. In Israel, didn't they started giving people 4 shots now, right? Their 4th shot.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't understand. It doesn't make any sense. I'm of the belief too that a lot of people are too afraid to eat crow, and that's just, I don't know if y'all are familiar with that saying, but they're afraid to admit they were wrong. But I talk to these folks. I'm like, listen, I'm going to have more respect for a person that comes out and says, you know what, I was wrong about this. something's nefarious going on because it's not making any sense. I was wrong.
Well, Craig, how many angry emails do you want to get?
Depends on how much time I got to read them.
I'm of the opinion that, I'm not going to say that COVID is not real. COVID is clearly some sort of virus or whatever you want to call a virus. But I don't think that this was even a bad flu. I don't think that this was anything worse than any other year. I think the people that are in charge had the ability to tell us what people died of, and they had the ability to use the numbers, and they had the ability to spin the numbers any way they wanted. Like, let's say 3 years ago, your grandmother had cancer, she had diabetes, and she had the flu, and she died. They're not going to tell you she died from the flu. This is the way that they push these numbers. When all this stuff finally comes back and they start telling you things like throughout the United States, the average age of people that died were 81. You know, the average age of death is 79 in the United States. So like you can look at that and say like, all right. And then if you also look at it, the vast majority of deaths had like 3 or 4 comorbidities. And so we can just look at this and say, what in the actual heck? Why did we shut down the entire planet for this? And I think that there was something bigger involved. And this was just like, I also think that it's a complete psyop when people start talking about like some lab leak theory. Like if this was a manufactured virus from a laboratory, they messed up because this one was not even this wasn't even a good one. We should have seen some serious numbers. I think it's all a joke, dude. And we see Fauci fighting with Rand Paul. We see them having these big bouts, and I just see it as more circus trying to distract us.
Well, yeah, I have a theory about that, why it's not as dangerous as it was first purported. I think that if you were doing testing on humans, which, I mean, okay, that's a speculation, but you'd be using prisoners. You'd be using people who have not good nutrition, haven't seen sunlight in a while, very low vitamin D levels, and you're exposing them to this virus, and you start seeing them drop, and you're like, hey, this is a pretty good virus. And then you release it into a healthy population, people who have a will to live because they're not imprisoned, then it might not do as well. And I think that a lot of times it's kind of like a Nazi scientist, my idea of like Nazi science, where they were testing on these prisoners. And I mean, immorality aside, which it certainly was, I think it's really bad science because you're testing on people who they have no more reason to live. They've been through every hell that you could possibly put them through. And they're going to die off a lot faster than someone in the field who are trying to live because they want to go back home. They got people counting on them. I mean, maybe they need to test on a healthier population if they're testing on people. That's what I'm saying.
Like they thought it was going to be really bad and were disappointed, so they had to start making up numbers.
Yeah. Like they just wanted, like they tested on a couple of people who are about ready to die anyways. And like, this shit's great. It's killing a lot of people, and happy thought.
Yeah, what I see this more of, man, is I honestly think this was like more of a psychological test than it was any sort of medical or viral test. Wanted to just see just how far we would comply. And man, did we bend over backwards for him.
Oh, yeah. It worked like a charm, too. It worked like a charm. There's a local feed store here, and that's where I go get some of my pet supplies. And they've always been really cool about people walking in without a mask on. And I was in there the other day, and they've always had this thing on the front door, CDC guidelines, you know, or observed here or something like that. But I'd go in there, they weren't wearing a mask and stuff. Well, when this Omicron thing came out, all of a sudden, everybody in that store's got a mask on. I saw a lady in there with 2 masks on. I'm walking around with my face shining in front of everybody, just smiling big. But I was surprised to see like the people that I know just talking to before being in there are covering their face again. You know, it's like they're starting to get away. Then all of a sudden, you see the meme where they got the lady screaming, "Send out the Omicron" or whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's like that's what happened, and then all of a sudden they start covering their face again.
It's funny to me too, because especially in an area like where you live, I mean, are there mask mandates where you're at? Do they?
Not anymore. We'll see. Shelby County was where Memphis is. I moved out of Shelby County. I'm in Fayette County now, where Oakland, Tennessee is. But
yeah,
Oakland dropped their mask mandates a long time ago. Shelby County was trying to hold on to them. Then the state of Tennessee came out and passed a law that counties cannot mandate masks anymore.
Good.
Shelby County went to the governor of Tennessee and said, can we mandate masks? And he said, no.
Good.
But the state's still saying that if schools want to do it, I've got a coworker. I think he's got 6 or 7 kids. I mean, he's got a litter. But anyway, they made his kids get this vaccine to go to school.
You're kidding.
Nope. And he's dead set against this vaccine. Okay. His wife got it. He's not going to get it that I know of. But yeah, he told me his kids had to have in-person schooling.
To me, that's the most tragic thing.
I told my kids if the school tried to do that, I would take them out of school, and they weren't very happy. But I'm like, you know what? You can do the testing. It's up to you. You can do the masks. It's up to you. But the vaccine is no longer up to you. I'm not going there.
I mean, in Minecraft, if my kid's schooled, I'd burn it to the ground.
Well, see, that's what I've said this 100 times now. I think if I had children, I'd be locked up right now. I'd be in jail. There's not a doubt in my mind because I know how my mind works, and I applaud parents that have not been gone to jail yet.
Yeah,
because I don't have that type of restraint. Because I do know if I had a child, and you see these pictures coming out anymore. There's another one going around right now. All these children in this class are masked up, and there's just ladies sitting there right there in front of them, just smiling without a mask on. This stuff is starting to make me angry, and I'm telling you, if I had children, I'd be in jail right now because I would not.
Yeah,
I'm telling you right now, because if I was sending my kids to school and they were making them get a mask, or if they try to put a vaccine in them, no, it ain't happening.
Like maybe what was that 10 minutes ago? I was like giving the Patriots a pat on the back. Now I'm gonna rip them a new one. So those same folks. So you're in an area where it's not, you're not forced by law or whatever it is, or by mandate. It's not really a law to wear those masks. And 9 out of 10 of those people that you live with in that county were, red voters, probably, right? Most of them were Republicans, voted for Trumpkin, the whole thing. And they are choosing out of fear to wear 2 masks to go into the farm store. And I find that really despicable. I also find it really despicable. There's a bunch of patriots up here, and they did the whole like force vax on all the teachers right up here in Oregon. And I live in a real like rural red area, and they'll sit there and whine about it, and they'll say how terrible it was that these local teachers were fired, and then they'll sit there and complain about the public schooling, and like not for 1 second they don't think like, hey, each one of us could pay $50 a week. We could hire some of these teachers. We could start a homeschool pod. We could take our kids out of this government indoctrination camp that they're starting to teach them about like weird things that we don't want them to do. So why don't we take our kids out of this hellhole system? Why don't we pay some of those teachers that align with our values and decided not to get the jab? Why don't we start our own system? And meanwhile, your friend, he had his 7 kids get vaxxed so that they could go to public school and get indoctrinated. It's garbage. It's crap. And I hate it.
Yeah. Like they hate socialism so much, but they're definitely all about the public schools and the military. So make sense of that somehow, I guess.
Yep.
Hey folks, Greg here again. As you know, this project is completely self-funded by me, and all profits go straight to charities here in Memphis. If you have a blog, a podcast, or a product that you would like to advertise on the Bad Roman podcast, the first 15 folks to sign up for 4 ad spots with us will get a 5th spot for free. Visit thebadroman.com/ads. I'm so happy how this project has grown, and thanks for listening. Now let's get back to the conversation. I want to change the subject just a little bit because I like your podcast because you talk about a lot of stuff that I don't hear very often. So it's really cool to me. But you, like I said, when you make the memes, it's like you've got your finger on something going on that I don't know is going on. Have you been paying? And I'm going to talk to Scott Horton about this too. But have you been talking or seeing anything about this, like this Ukraine and Russian thing? Because I'm really kind of curious if it's just posturing by Biden, or are we fixing to go to war again?
So I've been paying attention to what's going on in Ukraine for a few years now. I mean, obviously, I'm actually having Scott Horton on later in this month too, and I was actually going to talk Ukraine with him because obviously, if you have questions with what's going on in the world, Scott Horton is the man to talk to.
I'm just really kind of curious if it's posturing by Biden, like if it's just because they killed that terrorist in Syria the other day, but didn't talk about all the children and women that were murdered in this airstrike. You know what I'm saying? Was it an airstrike that they killed this guy with?
I think so. Yeah, I wasn't paying attention when that happened, but I know exactly what you're talking about, that they supposedly killed this ISIS leader. And then other people are saying that, no, he wasn't,
Because when you see a president's numbers start dropping like his are, they're plummeting. They start talking about going to war with somebody.
Well, it happens every single time. Yeah.
Every freaking time. And I'm wondering if that's what's happening right now with Ukraine and Russia, because to me, it doesn't look like Russia's really interested in getting into a war with anybody, but I don't know. Maybe they are.
Well, you have to look back at the history. So it's not an easy question. It's not an easy answer, rather. So you have to look back at the history of this was Reagan, and this was, man, who was that old dirty Russian? Whoever it was at the time, Gorbachev, they had made an agreement that NATO was never going to go east of Germany, and that Russia or the USSR was never going to go west of Germany. So they had split Germany, and they said, this is Eastern Europe, this is Western Europe. Like USSR won't go this way, NATO won't go this way. And since then, NATO has just rapidly expanded and taken all of those little tiny countries that used to be part of the USSR. And Russia wants kind of like a buffer zone. They want a little bit of a safety zone, because every single one of those NATO countries can be completely filled with nukes for deterrence purposes and things like that. And it puts Russia in this really vulnerable state. And so they're saying they finally drew a line in the sand, and they said, look, Ukraine is it. You're not going to go into Ukraine. If you try to make Ukraine part of NATO, we will fight to the death. So that's sort of where that's kind of like the history of it. And so since then, the CIA has propped up all types of crazy type of militias and weird movements in the Ukraine. We were actually funding full-on brown coat, actual called themselves Nazis in the Ukraine. And we actually helped take over the Ukraine, kick out the current government, and install those Nazis, because they were very nationalist and anti-Russian. And that's what we wanted. We wanted a government in there that was very anti-Russian. So we thought maybe we could get them to join NATO. That's the history behind this. So what Joe Biden is doing, he has some weird ties between Russia and Ukraine. It's interesting, man. Is he trying to deflect, trying to get his popularity up? Probably. Is something actually going to come of this? I don't really know, man. It's really funny to me that America is starting to, I don't know if we still really are the big bully on the stage like we act like we are. Because it seems like we've kind of turned tail a few times. Like in Afghanistan, we really showed our ass and left. And I don't know what's going on in the Ukraine, man.
Okay, I'm just really kind of interested in why are we sticking our nose in?
We always have to, because we're the big dumb jerk. We're the big bully we're the big bully on the recess yard right now.
It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, I know it doesn't make sense to you guys either, but it's not something I follow along with. And it was funny because I was sitting in my break room at work, and I mention this all the time. Fox News on one of the televisions, and this guy, he's a big Trump supporter, sitting next to me. And there's no sound, but you can watch the captions going on. They were talking about Ukraine and Russia, and he goes, man, those Democrats sure do like war. And I looked at him, and I didn't say nothing. I just let him have it, because he's right. They do like war. But he's ignoring the fact that Republicans like war too, and he was ignoring the fact that Trump did not, he still continued these wars while he was in office. He continued the genocide in Yemen while he was in office. He ignores that. So
the best thing to do is just kind of agree with him. You're like, you're absolutely right. And then kind of let them expound on that and try to draw out of them, why don't you like war, and try to find a principled position, where they're coming from. And then later, when a Republican's in office, you can try to hit him with the consistency thing, but it probably won't work.
It won't. But because then he'll start talking about how secure our border is because Trump secured the border. I'm like, you do know he's locking kids in cages, right? But we had a secure border. I said, I don't know, man. It doesn't sound very Christ-like to me to lock kids in cages. He goes, and he didn't say nothing else, and we were getting off a break anyway and going back to our presses. But that's how I talk to him anymore. I'm like, I don't know. What would Jesus do?
A certain Republican I talked to recently was like, oh, the kids in cages thing is such propaganda. Most of those people who are crossing the border aren't even related to those kids. So I would rather my kid be in a cage than be sex trafficked. And it's like, okay.
See, there is a very unfortunate thing that was happening. There was that if you had a kid with you, they were just letting you go because they had made some sort of rule that like they couldn't keep the kids with the parents in a detention center because there was adults and kids and they were afraid of like adults abusing kids. So then they actually had to separate the kids. And so they were putting kids in a kid center and adults in an adult center. But for a while, especially under Obama, if someone showed up with kids, they were just saying, all right, go. And so a lot of times there were traffickers or there were just like drug mules and things like that were straight up kidnapping kids and taking them with them because then they could just get shooed. They just get past the border.
I don't disagree with that, but it's first of all, a direct response to how the system is operating the border. And second of all, I don't think the cages are the best solution still. Call me crazy.
Yeah. I mean, we just need to get rid of all drug laws and we need to get rid of the, borders in general, and we won't have these issues.
Yeah, that's another thing is the borders. I don't understand why people have a problem with other folks just kind of trying to make a better life for themselves. Because if they made it legal for these folks to come work in the United States, I think it would cut down on the human trafficking and the kidnapping.
Absolutely.
They would be bringing their own children over. I was like, all right, let's go get a job. We can feed our children over here. Because if you look at it right now, there's a lot of Americans out there that don't want to work. They don't want. They've decided to stay home since this COVID stuff has started because they're still catching a check from the government. So why go to work?
Well, these same people, these same right wingers that demonize people that are trying to come over here. What they don't realize is this capitalist system that they love so much, or this crony capitalist system that they love so much. Those corporations, they make agreements with the government. They bring those people over here because they want cheap labor. So this is something way bigger, and this is why, like you'll see the government cracking down on the border, I guess, and attacking some migrants or something. But what you won't see is the government attacking those companies for hiring those people. If they were actually trying to hold some of those companies accountable for it, you'd actually see way less illegal migration because it's those companies that are bringing these people over.
But they'll crack down on like the small restaurants.
Yeah.
I don't know. Where I work, we've got a bunch of folks from last year it was Venezuela. And now it's Venezuela again this year. There's this girl that's where my press is, there's a inspection machine right behind it where she takes what I print and she inspects it. Her and her husband worked there, and her husband was gone for 2 or 3, almost 2 months, I think. I was like, where's he been? And she goes, he's on vacation. That was the first answer. And then later on, she's like, he's trying to get his work visa right so he could come back to work. So basically they were living off of one income while he was trying to get that straight. And she's like, I need overtime. We work a ton of overtime. She's wanting, like, if they cut us loose early or they give us a Saturday off, she goes, no, I need to work. It's that type of stuff. If he was at work, she wouldn't be so worried about, missing that second income, and they're sweet people. They're so sweet. And I don't understand why we treat them like garbage. I don't get it. I hate the stuff I hear people saying, that are surrounding me. And I don't engage them anymore because it doesn't do any good.
I lived in Arizona for a long time, and it's really, really bad there. Like, I've literally heard people say we should just set up people along the border with guns, and if you start shooting them when they come over, then they'll think twice about it. Like it's really bad there.
I think they used to do that, didn't they? There was like groups of people that would call themselves the Watchmen or something like that, and they would just sit there and shoot people.
It reminds me of something that's kind of similar. I think this guy used to work at where I'm at. He's retired now, but he said if I ever see a Muslim with a backpack on, I think we ought to just start picking them off. This is a professing Christian, and I mentioned it to somebody in one of our groups, and they said, "Well, how does he know he's a Muslim?" That's a great question.
It's a great question. You have to ask a few questions first, give him a little interview of his faith.
Now, if he looks like a Muslim, he's got a backpack on. I might as well just drop him right there because he's up to bad things apparently.
Oh man,
I'm so sick of people acting like that. You know, it seems to be getting worse with the division that's going on in the country too.
Demographically, evangelicals are like the top demographic group to be in favor of war, to be in favor of capital punishment, and to be in favor of torture, and like all of these things. Evangelical Christians are like the number one group to be in favor of all those things. Isn't that just, it boggles my mind. I feel like I want to get to the bottom of how that can be possible.
I'm curious too.
Because you think like, well, if they're just like, I don't know, influenced by the world and caught up in politics, then you would see them being the same as everybody else. But they're way worse. So how does that happen?
Because they were sold a bill of goods with the like the red button that Keith Giles talks about, the abortion, the abortion issue. And then once you lock them in with this abortion issue, then you can lock them into, well, we got to support the troops in other countries while we're killing other people in other countries. Then you can lock them in. Then you got to lock them into, we got to lock people in cages because they're smoking a plant, because it's immoral to be smoking a plant to get high, so we got to lock them in a cage because we got to fix them. And it's just, I think it started with the abortion thing, honestly, because it reminds me of a conversation. I think I've mentioned this before when Karl Rove worked for Reagan. And they sent Karl Rove a note saying, we're worried about losing the Christian right. And he said, don't worry. They have nowhere else to go. And I think that's how the Republicans have locked them in. And the Republicans target evangelicals probably more than they do anybody else in this country as a voter bloc. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's just what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say something pretty similar to that. It's more important to them, this like conservative culture that they have and some sort of like enforcement of it than they are of liberty, they are of Jesus. I mean, it's more important to them than Christianity. Christianity is just an aesthetic. That's something that they put in their background. Look, I've got a cross back here. I have a little fish sticker on the back of my car. I love Jesus.
Well, and also it's the same conversation I've had with some Christian friends that they're mad at me because I'm not supporting wars anymore or voting anymore because they're like, well, if we get the right enough Christians in office, then things will change. That's garbage.
They don't seem to see the conflict at all. Like they equate being a Christian to being pro-war.
Absolutely. I used to. I know they do because I was one of them. I came from that. I mean, I was that guy that you just described, Abby, because we are the good guys. It never dawned on me that that murdering people was not what Christ wanted us to do.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Like, man, somebody needs to study the psychology behind that because it's like evil genius level stuff.
It's taught in the churches.
Yeah.
That's where I learned it. From spending so much time in Southern Baptist churches. They're one of the worst about this is the Southern Baptist churches.
Do you think they're infiltrated?
It wouldn't surprise me. You got like the Southern Baptist Convention where they all meet each other, I don't know, once a year or something, select themselves a president of the convention. And they all use the same thing all the time. It's the same pro-military, pro-America, all this stuff. I don't have a problem with people loving their country. I'll pick on my dad so much on the show too. He's a Church of Christ preacher, but he told me, he goes, we've had these conversations kind of similar. He's not so much like a Southern Baptist, obviously, but he said, I still love my country. I said, Dad, you can love your country. I said, that's not what we're railing against. We're not railing against the people of this country. We're railing against the system, against the government behind this country, the folks that are murdering people, the folks that are stealing people or stealing from people and probably stealing people too. But you know what I'm saying? So when you're supporting that kind of system, you're supporting theft, you're supporting murder, and Christians shouldn't be involved with it. This is where I'm at on it.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't see any other way. I mean, I totally think the church was infiltrated because if you actually look at, I was listening to some history podcast. I think it was Dangerous History with Prof. CJ. He's an ANCAP libertarian dude that has a history podcast. It's fantastic, by the way.
I love that podcast.
Yeah, he's great. And he was talking a little bit about I don't remember, but it was early America. And he was talking about the history of it. And he was talking about how the churches were really anti-state. They're like, our focus is Christ. Our focus is like God only, like church first. This country can kick rocks. And just how like the church was definitely infiltrated, dude, and definitely turned nationalistic. And it was a way to control the Christians.
I don't know, though. I think I'm just thinking out loud. They were kind of set up for it because the underlying problem is like the desire for power and authority. And I think those early churches, early American churches, were setting themselves up as their own state. And it might have gotten to the point where they didn't have enough power just within their church and they needed to combine with the state in some way. But I think it does stem from that desire for power, which I think even without the state, you see a lot of that in the church.
Well, think about where they came from, though, Abby, because a lot of those early churches came from England, prior to the Revolution, and that's where they may have learned it from that, because that's basically how it was set up in England too. Am I right? Because they were so entangled with the state in England that they were able to direct the state how they wanted them to, and I think that's what the churches, what you're talking about, Abby, early on, were trying to do as well.
Right.
100%. But see, a lot of the churches in America were different because they had been persecuted by the state, by England, because if you weren't, Episcopal or Catholic or whatever it was, whoever was in charge at the time, if you were like, what are those other sects? I don't remember. Like if you're one of those Quakers, or if you're one of those terrible
the Amish.
Yeah. If you're Amish, what's the ones that we make fun of that are like predestination people? What are they called? You're going to get some hate mail.
The Calvinist.
The Calvinists. Yeah. If you're one of those dorks.
I love my Calvinist friends.
Yeah, I love you too.
We're just pick on you.
But anyways, if you're one of those folks, like the state was not your friend. And so they had especially the Amish realized that too. And they had a firm, like, we're separate.
Well, the Amish are very interesting too, because and we've talked about this some, but it's all like an Anabaptist background. And they were getting murdered by Lutherans. They were getting murdered by Calvinists. And then they fled to this country. And then instead of trying to operate the way they were over there, they just kind of stuck their head in the ground and became Amish. Like they were so separate from everything. There's a lot of Anabaptists in this country right now trying to get them out of that because they still feel like they should be engaged society like the early church did, but on the fringes.
They really shouldn't.
But on the fringes. No, I'm talking about like on the fringe, helping people on the fringes of society and not trying to work through the state. And, that's one thing I do love about the Anabaptist tradition is they're not interested in that garbage for the most part.
I think that the Amish got it right because, there's no way that you can really participate in like pop culture or any, without being corrupted in some way. Like,
well, no, but they're so secluded that they will not help their fellow man. You see what I'm saying? They won't really allow you into their community.
Well, yeah.
And I think also they have their own like extremely strict system of rules and so that's oppressive in itself. Yeah.
There's some really cool documentaries out there about the Amish. I went on down a rabbit hole with some Amish documentaries one night. Like I watched this one for hours. And there's some just kind of watching how the history of it was really fascinating to me and how they came about. And there's some interesting stuff. If you just look up on YouTube some Amish documentaries, you'll find some really interesting stuff to listen to.
Yeah, it would be. I'm kind of fascinated by what is the history. Like, how did they actually form a community? And because it is a radical way of living for sure.
And you got different sects of them too, where they got, you got some that are really, really, really super conservative. And then you got some that don't mind buying a bicycle. You know what I'm saying? Like they would think that a bicycle is something of this world, so they will not allow them to have bicycles. They don't treat their women right either. I'll say that right now. They really treat women like second-class citizens in these groups for the most part, and that's not something that Jesus ever talked about. And if you listen to some of these documentaries where only men could speak in church, and women basically just kind of just like they just sit there with their head down, like they were terrified of being there. But some of those women believe in that stuff too. But I don't know, maybe it's just like church indoctrination, like we see with public school indoctrination. It's
Yeah. The Southern Baptists believe a lot of that too.
Yeah, they do. You're right.
I mean, our Muslim brothers and sisters have a lot of that going on too. And like, that's the thing is, if you talk to them, a lot of those leaders are like, that's how I want to live. I wear this because I want to wear it. I don't want to, So, I mean, a lot of that is definitely cultural, and you kind of got to let them live the way they want to live. But what's interesting is like the Amish, they do give. Is that true? I think they do. They give their kids give them like a 2-year break. They go like, you got to decide what you want, how you want to live your life. And so like when they're like 16 to 18, something like that, they kick them out and they go experience the world. Go see what you like.
Maybe some of them. I don't know if all of them operate like that, because the one I was watching, there's a series of videos on it, but people were running away from it and they were going out to try and find them and bring them back. And they were like,
interesting. That sounds more like those Orthodox Mormon cults. Yeah, they definitely they'll send people after you and bring you back.
They'll also kick out the like teenage boys, so they won't be competition.
The teenage boys, yeah, because they want all the young girls for the old men.
Yeah.
Ugh.
So I want y'all to tell us a little bit about your podcast. You two can just kind of have the floor. Tell us about that, because it's an interesting podcast. You go on a lot of different rabbit holes, man. And I think it's cool. Like, we kind of stick to a script here. We'll branch off a little bit, but you're all over here. But I enjoy it because there's some interesting conversations that you have on there.
Well, I may or may not have ADHD, so I have a very hard time sticking to a script. Like, I'll have a plan. Like, we'll have a guest and we're like, all right, we're going to talk about this. And we talk about it for 10 minutes and then we're all over. And that's just kind of what happens. But I think that those conversations can be good, because I think you can get like a topic, because let's say I'm trying to interview one person specifically, right? And they're really good on this one topic. And every time you hear them, they talk about this topic and it's fantastic. Like, we could even say Scott Horton, like, a Scott and Horton conversation, right? But if you have me talking to him and jabbering at him, I might be able to get a funny story out of him. I might be able to get, you know what I mean? And so I've done that a lot with some interesting guests, where I've gotten conversations out of people that I get a different interview from the specific person, because I'm just incapable of giving a good interview, I guess. But it's fun. Tony, like, we started this. How long have we been doing this, man? Are we almost a year now, huh?
We started in the summer, I want to say, somewhere or spring.
Something like that. I met Tony. We'd met at an anarchist freedom festival up here up in Washington, actually. And we just kind of clicked. And then I was offered to teach like a pig slaughtering class to like a freedom cell network up there. And so I had killed a couple pigs. Tony was the only one to volunteer. Tony's like, yeah, man, I'll come and help. So Tony came with me. We killed a couple pigs. We drove them all the way up to Washington. We taught a pig slaughtering class, had this and that. And like the whole time, me and Tony had like some crazy, weird, off the wall, interesting conversations. And we just had a really good time. And I was like, man, we should start a podcast. And that's kind of history after that.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember that pig slaughtering day. And there's a part of my mind that's going, this guy's going to kill me and feed me to those pigs. Like, they're right there. He has a gun. He has pigs. Like, this, I'm gone.
I handed you a knife. It was a fair fight. You could have.
That's funny. So where can they find your podcast at?
Right now, you can find us anywhere, really. I mean, we're on Google, Apple, Spotify. We started a YouTube channel for half a second because we had enough listeners bugging us about it. Within 24 hours, we had a video taken down and a first strike, which is a lot of fun. So then we started an Odyssey account. So you can also find, we started recently recording videos, so you can see our pretty faces. You want to hear us talk and see us talk at the same time. We have an Odyssey account. So I'll send you a link if you want to add that in the show notes on that fun stuff.
Well, your wife handles all the show note stuff, so I'm sure she could hook that up. So
that's true. Yeah. Yeah, so I also have like a little sort of media company-ish. Like I can make people media. I help make people ads. I was helping a dude that was selling insurance. He wanted me to make him ads, so I started making him ads. I started working for a restaurant around here. I started making them ads, and my wife does proofreading, and she does like what the heck do you call that? Like website auditing, and she can do show notes for people as well. So that's kind of our little side hustle.
She took that over for us as well, and it's been great. It's been great. It's relieved our producer of a little work too, so it helps. I don't know. It's pretty cool to watch everybody kind of get involved with it, and I appreciate her work. And I should have mentioned that at the beginning as well. I am sorry, Abigail, that I did not mention your work on the show, and I do appreciate your help and everything the time you put into, because I know you just had a new baby, and I'm sure it's very time consuming as well.
Yeah, our little boy, he turned 4 months 2 days ago.
That dude is adorable, man. I got to tell you, I saw there was a picture of you holding him. I saw on Facebook. I guess your wife shared it, I think, and he had this little bow tie.
Oh yeah,
he's got this big smile, and it just looks like a happy little baby. I don't know if he's happy all the time, but in this photo, he looks very, very happy to be wearing a bow tie.
We got lucky. He's a good one. So I mean, the next one's probably going to be hard or something. That's usually how that works.
Tony, you got anything else you want to add before I let y'all get out of here?
You can find us on Instagram at Reality Czars Pod. You can find us on Twitter. We're pretty active on Twitter. And then I don't know. I mean, we started a Telegram group, but I think there's like 20 people in our group, something like that. But you can come and talk to us. We're pretty active. You can send us an email if you have questions. If you want to come and be a guest on our show, and if you want to yell at me because I said something that offended you, come on and go ahead. So at Reality Czars, what the heck is it? realityczarspod@gmail.com. You can shoot us an email, man. Come yell at me.
I want to come on the show and yell at you.
You're always welcome, Craig. And Abby as well.
All right, guys. I appreciate y'all's time, and I will talk to y'all soon.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Bad Roman Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you find your podcasts to never miss an episode. And while you're at it, if you like what you heard, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes. Or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, it really helps people find us. 100% of donations are given to local charities in Memphis, Tennessee. To learn more about the Bad Roman Project and to find show notes, please visit thebadroman.com.